A false dichotomy built right into that too, that somehow if you're meeting your baby's needs 100%, that there's no room for you. Welcome to the Baby Sleep Connection, a podcast that explores baby sleep and more through the lens of attachment and development. I'm your host, Heather Boyd. I'm a mom of 3, an occupational therapist, and a certified infant and family sleep specialist. If you are a tired parent who wants to support your baby's sleep holistically, keep listening as we delve into approaches that go well beyond the usual strategies of wake windows and bedtime routines. Your baby's sleep is connected with so much more. Hello and welcome to this episode. It's Heather Boyd, and we are talking today about the false dichotomy of parenting through sleep development, when you think that the only choices you have are to either do sleep training or even worse, cry it out or ride it out. Now, there's this misconception that in the baby sleep world that somehow these are the only choices we have, either be tough and sleep train or be a martyr. Now, I don't know about you, but when I became a parent, I didn't even know about those two choices. I thought there was only one. I thought sleep training was an absolute rite of passage, that every parent did it, and that was just the way it was. So I eventually found out the second choice, that I could just roll with it a little bit more. That came because I picked up the Baby Sleep book by Dr. Sears, and it blew my mind that there was an entire other option. Now, he didn't propose not doing anything about it, but it certainly pulled me in a completely different direction than sleep training. And I do want to delve into it a little bit today about why those two choices, the either tough it out or ride it out, seem to be what we think are our only options, and to propose a third option for you. So let's talk about the sleep training choice, this rite of passage that we think we have to go through, or many of us think we have to go through. If we don't believe that is the only way, there quite likely are many people around you who do, which can make your job quite challenging in navigating all the advice that you may be getting about sleep training and about it being your responsibility. I'd given some thought some time ago about why this is a popular approach, and there were 3 main reasons I felt like it has maintained its hold on us. Now, I'm ignoring one of the reasons being that many physicians who do not have very much training in sleep are reading white papers and journals that put sleep training front and center. I am going to ignore that piece right now. I do look forward to covering it in another episode, but it won't be this one. So when I look at what the 3 main reasons that I think that sleep training is still held up as a major choice, especially for those that are looking for an alternative, and they seem to have this sleep training in their front and center all the time. The first one is that there's this sense that babies are manipulating us if we don't teach them and we don't train them. Now, the word manipulation feels really awful. It can, when we feel manipulated by someone else, it can really trigger a lot of resentment and frustration and anger with us or inside us. And the idea of feeling manipulated by our baby also feels pretty terrible. But the fact is, a young baby doesn't have the capacity, at least in the way we think about manipulation, they don't have the capacity to manipulate us. What they do is figure out ways of signaling or communicating their need, in the hopes that that need will be met by a loving caregiver who is there for them. And so in some sense, in a very broad sense, yes, babies are manipulating us, but in the same way, they're manipulating the toy in their hand. They're picking it up. They're figuring out how to use it. When it comes to signaling to you that they have a need, they're figuring out how to use their voice to make sure that their needs are communicated and hopefully their needs are met. So it's really not manipulation in the sense that we use it. The other thing that I think gets brought up a lot, or gets considered a lot when we're looking at sleep training being a rite of passage, is this fear that our children will not develop independent sleep without it. That somehow if we slack off on our job of training our babies to sleep, that they will forever have poor sleep. They will forever need us to help them fall asleep, and that nothing will ever improve because we haven't done the work that we're supposed to do as parents. The fact is that when we look at the development of independent sleep, it's different in many ways to other milestones, but it's not that different. We don't walk train our babies. We trust that development is going to unfold and our babies will eventually walk. And except for circumstances where babies have something that really is interfering with their ability to develop that skill, as long as the environment is set up for them to explore, pull up on a couch, they'll see your smiling face and your hands are holding theirs, they will take those first tentative steps without training. The same can be said for sleep. If you create an environment that is conducive to sleep, something that is gentle, that is calming, that allows and honors their need for sleep at the time that they need it, then this sleep development, the maturation of the brain that needs to happen to have independent sleep, is going to unfold, almost whether you do anything about it in particular at all. Now, again, I'm not saying that doing nothing is your only option either, but when the choice is either sit back and watch development unfold and support it, or make your baby do something that they're not ready for, I'm definitely leaning more to the do nothing and ride it out camp. The last reason that I think really comes up when we're looking at sleep training and this rite of passage is this idea that poor sleep is a parent's problem. Poor sleep is from poor parenting. Now, I don't believe that in the least. And although there are things we can do that can make sleep harder, I know that parents are doing the very best they can to give their kids what they need to thrive. Now, if you are not blessed with an easy sleeper, it's not your fault. And likewise, if you have a baby who is a great sleeper, who's breaking all the, not breaking all the rules, following all the rules that are in the books about sleep, rules in quotes, of course, it's also not your fault or not your achievement. It is your baby's brain developing and growing in ways that allow your baby to develop new skills, like sleeping longer stretches or being able to roll or pull up at the couch. Your baby's sleep is impacted by so much. And I always think about parenting being like learning to bowl, where those bumpers that you can put up in the gutter so that someone who is not very good at bowling can roll that bowling ball down and it won't get in the gutter. It'll bounce against the bumpers. You are like the bumpers in that bowling alley. You are kind of containing the process and supporting your baby, but you're not the one that gets them to the finish line. That ball, whether it's rolled really quickly or slowly, is going to make it to the other end of that bowling alley eventually. The bumpers are just there to support them. Now, of course, when sleep is going really poorly, it can feel like the bowling ball has literally, sleep is literally in the gutter. But hopefully you understand what I mean by this idea that you're basically containing and holding and supporting your baby's sleep, and it is their brain and their bodies that are doing most of the work. Now, what if we look at the flip side of it and look at this idea of doing nothing to support your baby's sleep? Now, I've already hinted at the idea that if you do nothing, sleep will still unfold, presuming, of course, that you have a safe space for your baby, that the environment is relatively safe, that they have a place to sleep, and that it's quiet enough, and that you're doing the bare minimum, let's say, that sleep will still unfold as it should. But I think the idea around not doing anything is suggesting, for parents that feel pressure to just very much go with the flow, even when it's not quite in alignment with what you feel is right for your baby. I think part of this comes from the idea that you have to meet the need 150% or attachment will be damaged. I think that is such an unrealistic and unreasonable bar to set our parenting at, to think that if we are not absolutely perfect with our parenting, that somehow attachment will get damaged and our baby will not feel safe falling asleep. Now, the fact is that attachment gets broken and repaired all the time. If we miss our baby's gaze, attachment is broken. But when we make eye contact with them, it repairs. And I always think about this as being like a muscle that it breaks down when we're lifting weights and then builds back stronger. Now, we're not contriving poor situations for babies. We want to meet their needs, but we're not perfect. Attachment will not be perfect. And so what we're trying to do is figure out a way that we can build on the attachment and connection, allow our babies to build the trust that they have that will be there as well as we can, and for us to be looking at anticipating or trying to figure out what is the need of our baby. We're not going to get it 100% of the time. Absolutely not. But we do get points for trying. We are able to show up with curiosity to figure out as best we can what could be going on that's making this really hard for my baby. Now, there isn't always something to fix, and that's where it gets really tricky, right? There are some times where you have made sure that they're fed, they have a dry diaper, you've patted them, you've burped them, you've made sure they had appropriate level of stimulation during the day, they've been outside and had fresh air, and they're still not sleeping. It does not mean you haven't been there and trying to figure it out as best you can. So this idea of setting the bar so high that if you don't meet their need 100% of the time, that somehow things are going to go awry is just unfair. It's unfair to you, and it doesn't allow you to show up with that curiosity that you need to figure out who your baby is and what they need. The second point that I think is really important here when it comes to this idea of feeling like you have to be a martyr or suffer through and not take care of yourself is this idea that your baby's needs must always come before yours, and that your baby's needs are always more important than yours. Now, babies do have some non-negotiable needs, things that they can't get for themselves that are extremely important for you to provide. And sometimes it's all in, like some periods of development, you have to just give and give. But most of the time, it doesn't work that way. And it doesn't mean that even as you're giving your baby what they need, that you aren't also taking care of yourself. I think there is a false dichotomy built right into that too, that somehow if you're meeting your baby's needs 100%, that there's no room for you. And you can take care of yourself and others around you. And this is a real passion of mine, is to have others around you being able to support you in your role as a mom, especially in those early intense days when the need from your baby is so high and your need to recover and your need to adapt to your new role is so high as well. So in essence, really, it's about, it doesn't mean that your needs don't matter, and it doesn't mean that it's an either or, it's an and. The last point I'd like to make about riding it out and doing nothing is this sense that I pick up occasionally in some of the things that I read that suggests that if we're not willing to sacrifice all of our own needs, that we're not cut out to be attachment or responsive parenting. And I think that's a little bit of hogwash. Well, a whole lot of hogwash. Really, when we are best able, or the times that we're best able to meet our baby's needs are when we've taken care of ourselves too. That may not be easy, and it's certainly not going to be ideal, especially during these very intense periods of time where your baby may be going through a growth spurt, or be sick, or you're sick, or your baby is not sleeping as much as you thought they would, and yet they seem quite content. And so you're resigning yourself to the fact that you can't get more sleep out of your baby because they just don't need it. But this idea that somehow we need to sacrifice to that extent to get a badge of honor for responsive parenting doesn't do anybody any good. So there are the two extremes, the do nothing or cry it out. I've already said I lean more towards the do nothing because there are many, many times when I'm coaching families where there is nothing in particular that needs to be fixed, that the sleep that we're seeing represents their baby's overall sleep needs or a challenging time their baby is going through, and we need to ride it out. I always picture buckling into a roller coaster, and you bring that safety bar down and you hang on for dear life as you go up that steep hill and fly down the other side. But many times we can find a middle ground between doing nothing and feeling like we have to take the reins and completely control things behaviorally. And I have 3 short points that I want to make that you can bring with you to any sleep challenge that you're having. It's solving, supporting, and reframing. And the first one is solving. Solving is when there is something that we could change about how sleep is looking at this point in time. Solving it means looking at perhaps a health issue that is getting in the way, like colic, or acknowledging that your baby is sick and may need something to support them feeling better so that sleep is better. But solving is also about looking at what is the way to make the sleep environment ideal for your baby to pave the way for better sleep. So it could be about setting up the sleep environment or looking at the timing of sleep so that you're solving the challenge by making small shifts in how sleep is unfolding over the day. The second point is support. This is when you support or meet the need. So you've done your solving and fixing with the first point, the solving. But the support is to meet your baby's need as best you can under the circumstances. And that means looking at what is it that they need to feel safe and secure to fall asleep. Is it nursing? Is it bouncing and patting? Is it you just being present? Is it you waiting until they fall asleep? All of these things can support them where they're at. Supporting them also means being able to adapt as sleep development unfolds. Your baby in general is going to need less sleep over time. That's why we see naps drop. That's why when naps are about to be dropped, nighttime sleep often suffers a bit because babies have already had their sleep needs met. So the idea is don't try to solve sleep all the time. A lot of the time you're in support mode. Sometimes sleep is just the way it is, and if we can find a way to release this burden of trying to fix it, then we can lean in and be able to support it in a way that requires less energy of us. There's less resistance in trying to fix something that isn't broken, and it does tend to lead to easier sleep because we're not wasting energy trying to fix something that is actually going okay for our kiddos. Now, the last point, the last tip I want to give you today is reframing. Reframing, I used to call it self-care, but I wanted it to include a little bit more than just self-care, just self-care as if it's not important. So reframing is about changing the way you think about your baby's sleep so that you aren't trying to fix it all the time when it's not broken. Part of that is being able to take care of yourself and maximize how much sleep or rest you're getting, eliminating the time sucks in your schedule or your day, the things that are taking a lot of your time or taking a lot of your energy, but aren't actually moving things forward in a way that feels good for your family. That could be relationships. It could be the pressure you're putting on yourself to maintain your house. It could be forgetting that reaching out for support through a friend, family, or a coach or therapist can be really critical in reframing the way that you're moving, the way that you're supporting your baby's sleep. Reframing, and this is the last point I want to make today, is that reframing is also about finding your own way. There are so many resources out there for how sleep develops and what to do for sleep and the tips to manage sleep and the ways to get your baby to sleep more. None of them are written with your baby in mind. And so part of reframing is taking this idea that your baby is unique, that the needs they have are their own, and that if you can find your own way to meet their needs well and safely, to be able to support their sleep in ways that are in alignment with your parenting, then everybody may be able to get a better night's sleep. I'll finish off there. I want to thank you again for being here. Remember to subscribe if you don't want to miss the next episode, and I wish you a lovely night's sleep. Thank you for joining me on this episode. I do hope that you found the information and perspectives in this podcast episode helpful to you as you navigate your baby's sleep development. Of course, this podcast provides general information and it isn't tailored to your family's reality or the specific needs of your baby. If you're concerned about your baby's sleep or health, be sure to reach out to your healthcare provider. If you're feeling exhausted and overwhelmed and you need a place to feel nurtured and reassured, you can find me on Instagram at familysleep.ca. Until next episode, look for the connections that support you and your baby.